Hey guys, welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Andre Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Bittner and Ash Paulson to discuss Nintendo's 2016 year in review, including the Wii U, 3DS, mobile, Amiibo, and tons more. So let's get started. Alright guys, 2016 is just about over, in just a matter of hours, which means it's time to look back on everything that happened this year, the highs, the lows, and everything in between, or at least most of it. And of course, I'll get things kicked off here with my overall impression in 2016. And I'll be straight up, this year was a bit of a bummer for me. It wasn't terrible, there were some really good games in there, and we'll talk about those. But this year did mark the end, effectively the end of the Wii U. Even the 3DS seems to be winding down, and on both platforms there wasn't really a ton that appealed to me. Don't get me wrong, the 3DS actually had a pretty decent lineup. There just wasn't that much that appealed to me personally, and of course the Wii U just didn't have much in general. And this is all largely because this year seems to be more of a transitional year for Nintendo, in which they're winding down their current platforms and gearing up for the Switch coming next year. And in that respect, this year was almost as much about looking forward as it was on what actually came out, because we got the first reveal of the Switch, and we also got hints of other things in Nintendo's future, including their future on mobile, because we got the first 3 mobile games from Nintendo, as well as them broadening out beyond games in general, including as it applies to movies and theme parks. So 2016 was both exciting for what's coming down the line, as well as disappointing in what actually did come down the line this year. But that's enough about me for now. What did you guys think of 2016 in general?
I definitely feel that way in regards to the Wii U side of things. The Wii U release was anemic. This is like many Nintendo systems when it's coming to the end of its lifespan. There is just barely anything coming out. And the Wii U, this is pretty obvious that the Wii U is dead. There's barely anything that came out. There really wasn't a lot to get excited about. There were a few highlights, in my opinion, on the Wii U that do help it stand out a little bit, that it wasn't completely dead, just, mostly dead. And the 3DS definitely showed a lot more signs of life, has a lot of great games that came out this year. And I did cover a lot more 3DS games than you. I think the only 3DS game you actually covered this year, Andre, was Super Mario Maker 3DS, and boy, I can tell why that was not one of your favorites.
That's kind of what I'm talking about. We went from Mario Maker was a brilliant game on the Wii U, and then they released this version on the 3DS that completely misses the point of the game. And it's just, I don't know, this year was just a weak one overall for me. There are exceptions, and we'll get to that again.
All I have to say in terms of 2016 and covering stuff is thank God for Pokemon.
Yeah.
Both in terms of the 20th anniversary, Pokemon Go in the middle of the summer, and then Pokemon Sun and Moon at the end of the year. That actually gave me something to cover and keep us having content, because otherwise we would have been in some major trouble as far as having stuff to talk about on the Nintendo side of things. So that's just a sign of things like thank God for Pokemon. But yeah, what about you, Ash?
I kind of fall in line with how you feel, Derek. As a gaming fan, 2016 was an embarrassment of riches for me. I loved it. I didn't have nearly enough time to play everything I wanted to on all consoles, but on the Nintendo front, kind of a disappointing year, mainly for Wii U, obviously because the Wii U is dead, as we all know at this point. Not so much the 3DS. Hell, my game of the year is a 3DS game. So I thought the 3DS actually had a pretty strong year, and I had a great time with it. But the Wii U, man, I love this system for all of its problems and all of its, inconsistencies and issues. I love the Wii U, and I'm going to miss it so much. But yeah, we're seeing exactly what happens to a console at the end of its life cycle. A very, just a light release schedule. Some real gems toward the end of its life cycle, but really, overall, a disappointing kind of uneventful year for Wii U. When one of the games we have on our list here is Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge, that Wii U didn't have exactly the best year. However,
come on, Ash, that used the Amiibo to its fullest potential.
Oh,
how could
totally.
you not love that game?
Clearly, obviously, but at the same time, I think we were all surprised by what the Wii U's final exclusive really ended up being and how great it ended up being, which of course is Paper Mario Color Splash. And that to me is a bright spot, a real bright spot, and really has allowed the Wii U to go out, in kind of a flash of glory. Maybe a small flash of glory, but a nice one, because I don't think any of us were expecting Color Splash to be as good as it was. So at the end of the day, even if Nintendo did have a really disappointing year, and the Wii U really was the reason for that, at least it was able to go out with a nice game.
Did you say Splash of Glory? Was that intended?
No, I did not. I didn't. I think I said Flash of Glory.
Oh, Flash of Glory. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Although I should have said Splash. Yeah, I should have.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Ash, but that's a very subjective take on Paper Mario Color Splash. I very much enjoyed that game, but it seems like a lot of people don't agree. Although, as we mentioned before, I also suspect most of them haven't played the game.
Exactly. And I was just talking about all three of us, which I know,
sure.
Derek, you haven't played it, but you don't seem to have a major problem with it either.
No, I'm excited to finally try it out whenever it's
Yeah.
time for me to stream it because you guys enjoyed it so much. So I'm curious what my take will be.
Yeah, I feel like that. I mean, I feel like the Wii U in general is where a lot of my disappointment lies. Just because I'm not a huge handheld gamer, and the games that released on the 3DS this year didn't necessarily even appeal to me that much.
Right.
So the Wii U is, as a home console gamer primarily. The Wii U's lineup this year just really just let me down overall, just because there wasn't much to it. Luckily, we did end on a high note, as you mentioned, with Color Splash. And I thought, and I actually liked Star Fox Zero toward the beginning of this year. Granted, isn't very high on our scale, but I did end up liking it. My biggest problem with that game is just the fact that it's too little, too late. They're doubling down on the Wii U or on the Wii U's gamepad in a time when they shouldn't be.
I do think it would have been a lot more widely accepted, or at least maybe if it was released back, in 2014, like the second year of the Wii U's release, or early on within that life cycle, because, hey, here is something interesting and different. It actually, because for a while there, you were actually calling for, I want games to actually make good use of the gamepad.
Yeah, I was.
And this is a game that kind of does that, but not in the way people were expecting, especially when you're adhering so close to Star Fox 64, and having it be so different in the controls department. It's just, the comparisons are going to come out like crazy, and that's certainly what happened with Zero.
Well, you just said the magic words that are really kind of outline my main problems with Star Fox Zero, and those are Star Fox 64. I feel like I've played this game before, and that's my problem with it. It's like, I do like the controls. Once you get over that initial hump, the controls are actually kind of incredible, and they really do work. But you're taking them through this kind of I feel like it's this greatest hits version of Star Fox 64, where things are just remixed enough to where you go, oh, it's not quite 64, but it's still 64. It's like, oh, okay, so instead of Bill being on Katina, he's in space now, and, instead of Kat flying in to save you, you save her. It's just like these small changes where it's like, okay, who is this game really aimed at? Is it aimed at Star Fox 64 fans? Is it aimed at newcomers? I feel like Star Fox Zero didn't really know what it wanted to be, but that's not to say it's a terrible game. I've been playing the co-op mode with my friend, and I've been having a great time doing that because I've been focusing on the flying, which means I get to look at the TV and take in, all the great graphics, as opposed to just looking at the gamepad screen like in Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, and not really appreciating just how good the game can look at times.
Mm-hmm. And that's the major thing here. It's that same old, and also released at a time where it couldn't really be appreciated. And I kind of feel the same way about Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE. This is a game that almost immediately got written off by Fire Emblem fans and Shin Megami Tensei fans as soon as it was actually revealed what the game would be like, because everybody was expecting an actual crossover of these characters, and instead what we got is a original idea with Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem elements mixed together. Still a great game. I want to play more of it. I'm upset that I didn't get to actually review it and give true thoughts on it, but what I did play, I really enjoyed, and I think this is a really great RPG for those looking for more of a classic RPG or are fans of the Persona games. I've heard really good things about this game. So again, another highlight towards the end of the year, but that was a summer game that did not get much attention and is essentially disappeared at this point.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that game up, because that is probably that has become my biggest gaming regret of 2016, was not having time for that game. You guys know how I love my Japanese RPGs, and this is one that was not only exclusive to the Wii U, but also had this weird Fire Emblem Shin Megami Tensei flavor. This whole game is such a singular existence, not only the platform it's on, but just what it is. And I wanted to play it so much, and I loved what we played at PAX East, Derek, and I was like, I'm so into this. But I knew, I had that creeping feeling that I was like, it's coming out in July in the middle of summer, which is usually when my work season is heaviest. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to have time to play this game. And fast forward to December 30th, and yeah, I have not had time to play it. But I love everything about what I think that game is in terms of the kind of the pop star aesthetic and the J-pop soundtrack and the crazy colors and the cool interface. I really want to play this game, and it's something that I hope to really get to in 2017. And One other thing about it is it hasn't been quite as forgotten, actually, as I thought it might be. I've been looking at a lot of top 10, top 15, whatever lists of the year, and a lot of people, surprisingly, have this game on their list. So I'm glad to see that it hasn't been quite as forgotten as I assumed that it would be.
Yeah, I don't know how good the sales are, but I have to assume not amazing. And maybe it's one of those games that would have done better if they had waited for the Switch, because it's such a weird idea, and the Wii U console base is just so small.
Right.
But despite that small base and how games just tend to not sell as well on the Wii U, we still had a success story this year in the form of Pokken Tournament.
Yeah, you actually read my mind, Derek. That's what I was going to talk about after I wanted to segue into that. So, Pokken Tournament, not only do we have this, crazy exclusive Japanese RPG, but we also had this exclusive fighting game, a Pokemon fighting game no less, and it was it shipped 1 million copies on Wii U, which for a Wii U game period is really good, especially considering the fact that around the same time, Street Fighter V came out, and we found out that it shipped 1.4 million copies in around the same period. Now, of course, that's a higher number, but that's also across both PlayStation 4 and PC. So, I mean, it's not higher by that far, and we're talking about two of the biggest platforms of currently versus Wii U, which is dead. So, pretty impressive performance for this game.
I think if anything, it just shows, this whole year has demonstrated that we should never underestimate Pokemon when it comes to anything.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, Pokemon has had such an amazing year, and if Pokemon, between Pokken Tournament and Pokemon Go and Sun and Moon, you can never count out Pokemon.
Yeah.
No.
It's a fad.
And it might, it's totally a fad.
Totally.
I remember that back when I was a kid. It was like, oh, it's going to die out after a few years. Nobody's going to remember it. Nope. No, it was great. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that this was the first Pokemon title on the Wii U. It was finally seeing the characters in HD, and it was exciting and fun, and actually had a good battle system. Heck, the game showed up at EVO, which is like the premier fighting game tournament, which I think, didn't Nintendo have the most games at EVO this year? Which is insane to think about.
Yeah, I think Pikachu was in as many EVO games this year as Ryu, which is really weird when you think about it.
That is really weird.
Yeah.
The Wii U had a rough year, but at least there were some flashes of brilliance among it.
I will give the Wii U some credit in that it actually had games in its mostly final year, whereas we've seen Nintendo consoles with even less than that. Like the 64's final year, as I recall, was abysmal.
You really got the sense after a while, especially during the year, that it was just like, hold this back, put it on the Switch.
Right. Although
That's really what it felt like.
I do want to highlight one game here that we have on our list, and that's Axiom Verge. And the reason I want to highlight that is because it really serves as a great example of just how well Nintendo has courted the indie scene, despite the Wii U's various failures. I mean, I think the Wii U, even going into the end of its life, really has a strong selection of indie games, some of the best indie games out there. Axiom Verge is one of them, actually. And this is like a really fantastic Metroidvania title, designed by one guy, Tom Happ. One person made this whole game, and it's really one of the best examples of its genre. I mean, it is obviously inspired by games like Super Metroid, and I highly recommend that you go check this out and other indie games out on the eShop, because despite the Wii U's various failures, it still has a great selection of indie games, and that gives me hope that the selection of indie games on the Switch is going to be similarly exciting.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Let's hope so,
but
indeed.
Thankfully, the 3DS had a much better lineup, in my opinion.
Especially if you're a JRPG fan.
I guess so.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are a ton of RPGs. We got Paper Jam, we have Fire Emblem Fates, Bravely Second, Dragon Quest VII, and then Pokemon Sun and Moon. Those are some pretty major RPGs that, spread out across the entire year that you could really get a lot of mileage out of. Fire Emblem Fates especially. That game is just, like, the fact that it was basically 3 games in one, it was huge, and I think it... I think it did quite well.
Plus DLC. I feel like you could play that
DLC.
game forever. Like, if you just keep playing that game in all 3 versions and the DLC, I feel like you could literally play Fire Emblem Fates forever. There's so much in that game. Like, crazy amounts of content.
Oh yeah, I still have not finished it all. But it also, I think, served to cement Fire Emblem as one of Nintendo's premier franchises, which is weird to think about because one of their first mobile games hasn't come out yet, obviously, but is a Fire Emblem game. That is incredible to think about that something that was just so niche somehow made it to like be one of Nintendo's big titles.
Yeah, I mean, there can be no doubt now. I think Nintendo came out and said that Fire Emblem Fates was the best, fastest-selling Fire Emblem title in the US so far. I mean, and it's true. There can be no doubt. Fire Emblem is absolutely, at this point in time, one of Nintendo's A-tier franchises. And it's really weird to see, as you said, because we've gone from it basically having no identity in America whatsoever, like the first 7 games didn't even come here, to it now being one of Nintendo's premier franchises, apparently around the world. So, I mean, it's especially interesting when you think about the fact that I think Fire Emblem Awakening, I think the dev team came out and said, that was their last chance. Like, if Awakening didn't sell, there was a very good chance that Fire Emblem was going to be shelved as a whole. Mm-hmm. So not only did it sell, it completely gave the series a new rebirth, as it were.
They tapped into something with Awakening that just they were able to really drive home in Fates. I mean, yeah, it's probably the whole, I hate to use this word, but the waifu factor and
the anime factor, the anime factor.
Yeah, and the relationships and all that just added that extra layer that got people really into it. And then, of course, the ways to make it a little easier and not so unforgiving for the more casual players, which ended up working. So...
Right. Well, I have to admit, I didn't get Fire Emblem before, but some of you might remember I did some features about Fire Emblem Fates. We did a cross-promotion thing, and I get it now. Like, after having played Fire Emblem Fates so much for those features, I get it. Like, I see why people love this series. So, Fire Emblem Fates was just one part of what I thought was a very successful year for 3DS.
Mm-hmm. I will say, though, one of the low points for me was Hyrule Warriors Legends.
Yeah.
That game, like, at the time, I didn't even own a new 3DS, so I had to experience it on the original 3DS, and that just highlighted more than any other game the difference between it, because I'm looking at it, I'm basically watching, like, old, like, N64 era frames where they're just, the monsters are going back and forth between 2 frames in order to simulate walking towards you, and I'm like, what the hell is this? How do you go from the brilliance that was Hyrule Warriors on Wii U, whereas just visually interesting at all times and had all these creatures that you could fight, where on 3DS I'm trying to do these special attacks and I'm lucky if I get up to maybe 50, 75 hits in a single combo, which is like the base when it comes to the Wii U version. Mm-hmm. And it's even more frustrating considering how much they added to Legends. You had all the new characters involved, the new scenarios. It just felt like it was a missed opportunity to just pop that on the Wii U and really expand upon it. And they kind of did with the characters popping up throughout the year where you could just get them, but there was no missions or anything to really go off that. It really... I mean, I can tell you the reason, obviously, why they did put it on the 3DS instead of the Wii U. It's because the Wii U was dying. The 3DS had a much bigger install base, so they had a chance of selling more copies on it. But there is no reason to play this game other than wanting to experience those.
That kind of summarizes the problems with, I guess there were 2 ports this year from Wii U games, if I'm looking at this correctly. There was that and the Mario Maker, both of which kind of missed the point. Hyrule Warriors less so than Mario Maker, which totally missed the point. But I mean, the whole point is taking on a ton of enemies at once, and even on the new 3DS, it's hampered a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got the experience if you had the new 3DS, but I still find it gimped. But
no, I played Hyrule Warriors Legends once, and that was at I think it was Anime Expo, or no, it was WonderCon. It was some show demo, and I was like, okay, I played this. I never need to go out unless I was going to review it. Then I'm like, okay, I play this. I have the Wii U version. Why would I ever want to go and spend $40 on this gimped version of Hyrule Warriors? Now, that, of course, is assuming you own a Wii U. If you don't, then Hyrule Warriors Legends becomes a lot more attractive. And the fact that there is so much content across both versions of this game still really impresses the hell out of me. But, yeah, if you've already played the Wii U version, Legends really does suffer from that kind of, well, what's the point of this? Same thing as Super Mario Maker for 3DS. And as we're going to see early next year, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, which, I think you touched on something. Clearly, these games exist for one reason, and that is to recoup some more of the development costs for these Wii U games that basically were released for a dead system. So, I understand why Nintendo's doing it. I just wish they were doing more to differentiate these 3DS releases from their original Wii U counterparts.
It's really showing why we need the Switch, or why Nintendo needs a Switch. I'm tired of these ports that are worse than the originals.
Yeah.
So,
no, I hear you.
Yeah, just make one system, put all your games onto it, and I'll be happy. We can play them however we want.
That makes sense, yeah.
I know a high point for both me and Derek was Kirby Planet Robobot, and I want to make special mention of that game because it is one of the best Kirby games I played in years. And I love Triple Deluxe, or I liked it a lot, don't get me wrong, but Planet Robobot, it's creative, and it's still very much a core Kirby game. It's not one of the creative, weird spin-off Kirby games. It is a traditional Kirby game, but it's so creative in the way that it uses the Robobot armor, and it ends up feeling like a marriage of Kirby and like Mega Man X's right armor parts, and it's awesome. This game is so good, and if you haven't played it, it's one of the 3DS's like best releases this year.
I think you're talking to me right there, then. I do need to play it.
You do. Yeah, especially if you love Kirby Superstar, which you do, Andre.
I do, yeah. I mean, I wrote it off because Triple Deluxe did nothing for me. I played a few levels of that. I'm like, okay, this is a Kirby game I've played tons of times before. But it sounds like Planet Robobot really steps it up a few notches, right?
Yeah, I mean, it basically does, like what they started with Return to Dreamland, where they were trying to just get traditional Kirby games back in there, and the big one with that was the super abilities along with the multiplayer. And then Triple Deluxe took that and made the suction the big thing, so it didn't quite take as long as the super abilities, and you could use it for puzzles and whatnot. And Planet Robobot refines that even further, and that with the Robobot armors, where you could basically do whatever you'd like, and it actually much more naturally flows into one another.
It's still a platformer when you're doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. You're not doing something special or different. It doesn't feel sectioned off, where it's like, oh, now I'm doing this. It's like, no, I got myself the Robobot armor. I can kick a lot of butt and do these puzzles in order to get new places and new things to do. And it became my all-time favorite Kirby. Now, granted, I haven't played all of them, but I have played Superstar, and I like this book more than Superstar.
Did you play all 7 games in Superstar?
Yes, I did. I completed that game.
Did you 100% find all the treasure in Great Cave Offensive?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, I guess we know what you're talking about.
And you still like Planet Robobot more, yeah.
Yeah, I still liked Robobot more.
Planet Robobot's like the one game from Nintendo this year that I haven't played that I feel like I need to, just based on everything I've heard.
Yeah. Final boss was also just brilliant, and I mean, I'll put it this way: I still remember this. I liked it so much that I forced myself to record that review while I was getting over just being deathly sick to the fact that I could barely talk. And if you go and listen to that review, I'm basically croaking it out the entire time.
Oh man!
Oh yeah, I think I remember that. Now I know I would be remiss, and people would be very upset if I didn't mention Rhythm Heaven Megamix, which, of course, I had been waiting for quite a while because I love the Rhythm Heaven series, and for a long time there, didn't look like the Megamix was going to come to the US at all. And then fast forward to E3 this year, where they surprise release it at the end of day 2 of E3, and I was so excited. Now, of course, that was during E3, so I couldn't do a full review for it, but I really liked Rhythm Heaven Megamix. I'm really glad that it's been released in every territory now. This is a series that I continue to believe needs more exposure. That said, for someone like me, who is a fan of the whole series, Megamix is only about 40% new content. It's mostly content repurposed and kind of rejuvenated from prior games. So it didn't quite have the impact on me like something like Rhythm Heaven Fever did, for example, or maybe even Rhythm Heaven DS. But this is still a great game, and if you haven't gotten into Rhythm Heaven at all, this is by far the version you have to go and try. So I'm really happy this game came out. I'm still playing it, but it doesn't quite have that crazy impact if you've played prior games in the series.
And I can kind of see that. I mean, Rhythm Heaven's not really down my alley, but
right.
A game that also didn't get much. I mean, it was kind of weird with Rhythm Heaven Megamix, how they just sort of popped that, like all of a sudden, like, hey, it's available, no fanfare, nothing. It's just there it is.
Right.
I mean, and another game I don't think got much fanfare after its initial reveal is Federation Force.
I think it much fanfare even before its reveal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's put it this way. This was Metroid's 20th anniversary. Nintendo didn't mention it once.
Yeah.
And that's the sad state of the Metroid franchise right now, and why Metroid fans are so upset that the one game we got after how long and after Other M was Federation Force. Now, granted, I like this game. I think it was a lot of fun, especially in the multiplayer setting. I played through it twice, once for my own review and then once for Some Call Me Johnny's review to help him out. And I think there's a lot of fun to be had. But it isn't a traditional Metroid, and that's what people want, and they rebelled against the fact that Nintendo was forcing this game on them. Mm-hmm. Pardon the pun.
Right. Nice. Well, Derek, I have not even played the full version of Federation Force, and I already know it sucks, so there. Like, I already know it's not worth playing, so there, what now? No, I actually really, this is one of those mini games I didn't get a chance to play, but I'm open to playing it, and a friend of mine who's a big Metroid fan wants to play it with me, but then he's like, maybe not. I let my sister borrow my 3DS, so maybe eventually. And I'm like, come on, you're like the only other person I know who's open-minded enough to play this game with me. So I'm still holding out for a co-op experience, so I don't want to play it through by myself.
I mean, that's arguably the biggest problem about Federation Force, is that just looking at it, it doesn't look like something you'd want to play. It doesn't look fun. They did a poor job selling that story, selling why you should play this game. And I've even played a few missions of the game. I don't think it's horrible. I also didn't think it was great. Like, it did nothing for me. Maybe I needed to play more to see where the fun is. But again, Nintendo did a poor job marketing it. I have no reason to play this game. And that's a big problem when you're dealing with a primarily online, multiplayer-focused game. You need people to be playing this game in order to get the most out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works. I love, like I said, one of the things I really enjoyed about the game was just how much variety there was. Like, there's over 20 missions, and very rarely did it mesh, like you're doing the same crap just as this different area. No, the scenarios were different in each time, and there was some actual challenge and some pretty cool moments. There's plenty to like in this, but I totally get why people just wrote off this game immediately, and I can't blame them for it at all, because Nintendo needed to do something for Metroid's 20th anniversary. Just toss out a bunch of games or a compilation or something. And it's nothing. And it's sad. It's a sad thing to see when Metroid is seriously one of their best franchises.
Well, and I think Federation Force continues to highlight Nintendo's weirdly uneven approach to online, even in 2016. Because, I mean, of course, that game had a fully featured online mode because it was built around that. But then they also shipped Star Fox Zero this year, and that was like a console game in 2016 that, like, the previous version of this game, Star Fox 64, had multiplayer. And this doesn't, not even local and not online, and I just feel like it's really strange, yet. And then we had last year, we had Triforce Heroes, and that had some online, but it didn't go quite far enough to make it as convenient to play as it should have been, whereas Metroid Prime does. So I'm like, I just feel like Nintendo continues to be really weirdly uneven about online in their games.
Well, I would even take that point and extend it. Nintendo this year, in terms of the games they released, because I think they're making a lot of great decisions now, and we'll get into that in our 2017 discussion. This year, more than anything, Nintendo felt confused. I felt like, as I mentioned, we had a port of a Wii U game being Twilight Princess Enhanced, which by itself is fine. Then we had Star Fox Zero, which felt too late. We had a bunch of ports from the Wii U to the 3DS, which were inferior and sometimes missed the point completely with Mario Maker 3DS. We had Mario Party on a handheld again, which again I don't think is something anyone wants. Even if the game itself was fun, who wants to play Mario Party on their handheld? I don't know. This the add online components, as you mentioned, Ash. I don't know. This year just felt weird.
Yeah. I can totally see that, because again, they're all of a sudden towards the end of we're getting, as you said, the 3DS isn't quite as dead as the Wii U, but it's definitely winding down, and now we're finally getting the Dragon Quest VII games on. Game on the 3DS, and 8 is coming next year, which is great. As a Dragon Quest fan, that is amazing to have, and these games are well worth playing. But it also just seems kind of late in the life cycle to do that.
Yeah.
The Animal Crossing New Leaf stuff is weird to me. Like, how old is that? That game is like 2 years old now, right?
Yeah.
And they just updated it so it can actually use all the Amiibo functionality because the game sold well. And I apparently it made a lot of Animal Crossing fans really happy with what it did, but didn't bring me back.
Yeah.
didn't do much for me.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't bring me back either, but at the same time, I'm glad Nintendo did that. I'm glad they're looking back to some of their biggest prior games and trying to come up with ways that Amiibo or Amiibo cards can enhance them. And so, not only that, but they released it as a free update. So I'm glad they did it, even if it didn't bring me back, because I'm not like a hardcore Animal Crossing fan. From what I've read, it really made a lot of people happy. So good on them for going back and releasing a free update like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely a good point. Like, it's cool that they're updating an old game like that. If I had a choice, I would have chosen a different game, but, it's not, it's,
Sure.
it's still, it's a cool surprise. Well, I guess we can use
Yeah.
that as a good time to transition real quick into what do you think of Amiibo support in general for 2016? Because before this discussion, Ash, I went back and listened to some of our 2015 discussion, and we were talking about Amiibo. Because last year was the true first year of Amiibo, this being the second true first year, this being the second, full year of Amiibo.
Right.
And in our video from last year, you mentioned that you really hope Nintendo tried something more creative this year with Amiibo to better take advantage of them. So I was curious as to your thoughts on how Amiibo were used this year, both in terms of which ones came out and also their implementation in games.
It's weird. I'm sitting in my apartment, yet I hear wind blowing, and I think I see a tumbleweed blowing across my apartment, which is strange. How does that make any sense?
Right?
No, it must be because we're talking about Amiibo support in 2016, because there was basically none. Yes, I know we just talked about Animal Crossing, and yes, and there was some Amiibo support, but clearly, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Nintendo didn't do a very good job making it seem or messaging why consumers need to buy Amiibo. I mean, the Kirby series Amiibo came out, the Anniversary Amiibo, and they're cool looking, but I already have those characters in the Smash Brothers versions. Like, I don't need to rebuy these characters, and I don't need to buy Waddle Dee. Like, and it also only works with Planet Robobot or other games where other Kirby Amiibo already work. Like, there is no compelling reason to buy these things outside of like the first year, I feel, other than if you just want them as a collectible figure. And now, since Nintendo launched with the Smash Brothers line, they've already exhausted all their A-list characters, and not only that, but their B-list, their C-list, and their D-list characters. So, like, all of the Nintendo characters I could possibly want to have a figure for, I already do. And it's not as if the Amiibo coming out now have all these cool gameplay uses. Like, what about the Zelda 30th Anniversary Amiibo? Who cares about those? Like, really? Who cares? Breath of the Wild isn't even out yet.
But are you forgetting this was the year we got our first real Amiibo-focused game in the form of Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge?
I have forgotten, because Nintendo forgot. Like, nobody remembers that game.
Yeah. I mean, we have... The funny thing is, there's actually Amiibo that you do care about that came out this year. For example, Shovel Knight came out this year.
Exactly.
But that was also still capturing when Amiibo was kind of big. I feel like... I think after the Roy and Ryu Amiibo came out, that's when it started to die. It's like once the Smash series was essentially done, that's when things became very few and far between, not much coming out. And one of the weirder aspects, to me at least, was there was a Shadow Mewtwo Amiibo card that you could get with the Pokken Tournament. And all it serves to do is get you Shadow Mewtwo early, not, you don't have to unlock it in-game. That's all it does. Yeah. It is just like, here's a random card, it unlocks you something a little early, but that's it. Mm-hmm. It's just the weirdest kind of support, and it's sad. I care about characters like the Kirby series and the Splatoon series, like, Callie Marie and a couple of those Mario series ones. I care about them, but then I see them in store and I'm like, I don't need them. It just clutters up my shelf space and all that. And the thing is, I wouldn't mind having them, but I also don't have a compelling reason to immediately get them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think launching with the Smash Brothers line was both their biggest advantage and their biggest, kind of, I guess, fall or downfall, was that when you launch with this crazy lineup of characters, where do you go from there? I mean, yes, you're going to have all this great success out of the gate, but after that, you're really just reissuing the same characters in different forms, like we've seen with the Kirby Amiibo and the Zelda Amiibo. And what's next? I mean, I'm sure we'll probably see another line of Amiibo with characters repurposed from Smash Brothers characters. So, like, I feel like launching with Smash was smart, but also at the same time maybe not smart in the long term.
It's really hard to say. Like, if Nintendo foretold the downfall of the Toys to Life market, then it was brilliant. Just getting all your big characters out of the way first thing, make some money back on the Wii U. Genius in that regard. But there is that side effect of the fact that people already now own all the characters they want. What's the point of buying more? Like, all the biggest ones or most of the biggest ones are out there. It makes, like, for instance, we had the second wave of Mario Amiibo come out this year, the second, or the Mario Lion series. And what's weird now is they feel extremely generic by comparison. I felt like if the Mario line had come out before the official Smash line, people might have been more willing to double dip than the other way around. Because now they just feel like generic figures that just replicate functionality you already have. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, outside of like neat little things like Boo being glow in the dark.
Exactly.
Right, and that actually was pretty cool. Yeah, and I actually would get that for that reason.
That's a compelling reason.
And I guess as a slight counterpoint to myself, I would say that the new Zelda Amiibo did a better job then of separating themselves from the previous Smash Amiibo. Well, actually, kind of. But we at least got Toon Zelda out of that as well.
But as part of like a combo pack with Toon Link, so if you already own Toon Link, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it is.
And it was another weird thing. Like, it made sense to get Callie and Marie, but having another set of Inkling Boy, Girl, and Squid with different colors, I mean...
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see the point of reissuing those because they do nothing different. It's just a different look for them. Mm-hmm. Which can be important. Maybe it's closer to the character you play or something like that. That might be important. But to the layman, it's like, why do I need to rebuy these Inkling characters?
Right. Well, and I'm also glad you brought up Shovel Knight, Derek, because it used to be that I said that Shovel Knight was the only Wii U game so far to take, really good advantage of Amiibo functionality and actually have gameplay baked around that is really compelling. Now, it's looking like, it pretty much is, that Shovel Knight is the only Wii U game ever made to have really compelling Amiibo functionality, and Nintendo didn't even make it.
Yeah.
Like, how did that happen? How did Yacht Club out Nintendo when it comes to Amiibo functionality?
Well, good on Yacht Club for their timing as well. They got there just the right moment. Because we've gotten no other third-party Amiibo support, despite everybody talking about that kind of thing.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, they really released that update at the only time they could have.
I think the closest Nintendo's gotten in terms of functionality like that would actually be Smash Brothers, with how you could grow a character and have them seemingly learn from you. And that was our first Amiibo game. We haven't seen anything close to that from Nintendo themselves since. And that's where I think they're just missing the boat on this a little bit, in that right now, Amiibo are, with few exceptions, are a little more than just like unlocks. So they're microtransactions in a way. And it's cool, like, they provide some like little neat perks if you already own those Amiibo. They provide very little reason to go out and actually buy them, though, for these reasons. So I think that's where Nintendo's kind of like missing the boat here to some degree. I mean, on the one hand, it's good in that you're not missing anything major if you have these Amiibo. On the other hand, it's like there's no reason to pick them up beyond the ones you already want, which is fine. They're saving me money, I guess. But I feel like they had the start of a good idea with Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge, in that the idea of having basically a free game that supports Amiibo is a good idea. The problem, the thing that was wrong with that game was, for one, it was frickin' Mario and Donkey Kong again, which I'm sick of at this point. Two, it only supported a handful of the Amiibo. And three, the whole idea as a package, even divorcing the Mario and Donkey Kong idea, just wasn't that compelling. Like, I think we need a deeper, free game that, not only rewards you for already owning Amiibo, but incentivizes you maybe to pick up more if you want, if you're interested in that game. I don't know. I really can't see Amiibo lasting too much longer if they don't start doing something more compelling with it.
Yeah, they need something more along the lines of the traditional Toys to Life game, but also those are starting to die out too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like Nintendo should look to the Denpa Men series for inspiration as to what to do with Amiibo, because I feel like the Denpa Men kind of nailed that. Okay, you have to go out and get these little characters from Wi-Fi spots, and kind of like, have that kind of Pokemon Go aspect of making you want to go out and do something in the game, within the game. And I feel like if Nintendo can capture that kind of mentality within these figures and make people want to go out and buy these figures for some gameplay aspect they unlock, then we're in business. Mm-hmm. But until then, I just feel like Amiibo really are nothing more than cool figurines of characters that might otherwise have never gotten figurines. Right. And once you've gotten them, then what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk. Did we talk DLC yet? I guess we touched on it briefly, but we haven't really delved into it. So
yeah.
So let's go and talk DLC a little bit. In that there really wasn't too much this year. We got Animal Crossing Welcome Amiibo, which, if you're a fan of the game, that is a really great free edition. We had Hyrule Warrior Legends with several new characters. And then we had Super Mario Maker with some costumes that came out. Like those are fun little things. And then we had Fire Emblem Fates, which had like new maps you could play on.
You're forgetting something, Andre.
Oh, what am I forgetting?
It is actually easy to forget, and I just looked it up, but Bayonetta and the Umber Clock Tower stage in Smash came out on February 3rd.
My God, that's right.
Right? It was this year.
Wow.
It was early this year that Bayonetta and the Umber Clock Tower came out.
Right.
So there is that.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten that was this year. But that kind of raises a good point, though, as it could have provided more DLC for existing games, like Smash, Mario Kart, or Mario Maker even, in order to better flesh out this year beyond what they, released in terms of games.
Well, to be fair, though, I mean, Smash had more than a year of DLC support. Like, they cut it off, but they cut it off after a full year.
That's absolutely true, for sure. But I felt like they could have helped mitigate the Wii U's weaknesses this year had they better supported those, really good games they already have.
Yeah, I guess you have to. I guess there are other logistical things like, does Sakurai still want to even look at this series? Does Sakurai still want to even, and is the development team free to work on other things? They can't just keep working on Smash forever,
And there's
as
also
much as
the
I would love
idea
them to.
that they probably cut it off at a certain point, maybe to switch over to, like, we're hearing these rumors of enhanced ports of both Smash and Mario Kart, with Mario Kart seeming to have some major upgrades in the form of the DLC that we were almost expecting in the form, that we've heard about. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just cut off the DLC for these Wii U games to really push the Switch when they port those games there, make them even more attractive.
That's true, yeah.
I can totally see that as a way that DLC sort of got gimped. And Splatoon, it made sense to cut it off. Ending Splatfest was weird to me. I mean, they ended it a great way with it being Callie versus Marie, and by the end, I was honestly getting tired of covering all the Splatoon releases because it was just, here's a slight variation to a weapon we've had before. Not really getting new stages or anything like that, but before that, all the different stuff that we're getting, all the little build-up that we got was great. And actually, sorry to skip around like this, but with Mario Maker, we focused on the costumes. They did do one update or was it two different updates, where we got the coins and the P-switch doors and all those other things.
Like checkpoints.
Yeah, and checkpoints and stuff. But that was in 2015, correct? It's been...
I think one came out at the beginning of this year. I can't remember.
Think so.
Time's just all merging together for me now.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a great point. Is that I guess where I'm coming from is I felt like the games I cared about didn't get any much meaningful content this year. Mario Maker is something they could have done far more with than they already have. And granted, I'm grateful for what they've done. It already was a great game. So I'm not complaining that much, but I felt like they could have gone even farther with it than they did. And the fact we haven't had a real update in 6 months, I think means they're basically done supporting that game minus the occasional costume.
So just for reference's sake, there was an update released on March 9th of this year. That was the one that added, like, you can shake a thwomp to turn it into a skewer, you can shake a P-warp door to turn into a lock door, stuff like that. Pink coins,
And that was a great
Things
update.
like
I just wanted more of that. That was less than 6 months after the game came out, and that was basically it.
Right.
I think...
And people were begging for, like, slopes or anything like that to just change up the game, and...
Yeah, that's not happening now. I mean, it might in the Switch version, hopefully, if there is a Switch version, which I'm sure there will be.
There has to be.
But I do wonder if the 3DS version kind of, like, dictated this. It's like, hey, we gotta we gotta lock in the content for the Wii U version, that way you don't have to update the 3DS version as well.
Yeah. And
right.
The 3DS version, just the fact that you couldn't share your levels outside of, like, street passing. DLC was kind of a sad state this year.
A bit, yeah. I mean, again, it gets into the whole point of this being a transitional year, right? Like, some systems are dying or nearing the end, and then we have a new one coming in next year. So, yeah, I mean, that's just 2016 in a nutshell. Although it did give birth to an entirely new platform for Nintendo, being mobile. And you'll hear us talk all about mobile, plus tons more in part 2 of our 2016 year in review discussion, so stay tuned for that very soon. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Of course, stay tuned to Game Explained for tons more on Nintendo and other things gaming as well. Catch you later. Bye.